All right. Let me change that. Great. We are good to go. Morning set up. I'm going to dive into the state. Focus. My friend, I'll see you again at the end. Have a beautiful time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. God, oh, turn off. I have music playing. I gotta turn that off. That'll distract me while I'm channeling. There we go. Silence. All right, and we thank you so much for the unique co-creation of this interaction. As always, it is our civilization's highest joy, passion, excitement to be able to speak to you and to all members of your species through the channel. And we extend to you the following question: how are you doing this day of your time?
I'm doing very good, I think.
All right, and we thank you for your thoughtful thoughts on how you are. Now, how would you like to proceed and play together this day?
Ryok, I imagine I have a society counterpart. Do I? And how many?
Well, you have quite a few, but the idea is normally, for most of you, you will make contact with one at a time. The first member of our species that is your counterpart that you will make contact with will be the one that is most relevant for your frequency as it is now. And as you develop a relationship with that counterpart, as that energy grows and solidifies, it is probable that that particular counterpart will then introduce you to other ones whom share oversoul connections with you. Remember, the process of developing and crystallizing a relationship with your counterpart is the exact same as crystallizing a relationship with yourself. Because remember, our species reflects back to you and all of you the energy of your own higher minds. So as you in your life tune in more powerfully to the energy of your higher self, you will then become a stronger vibrational match for your counterpart, and you will experience that communication not so much as an imagining, but as a knowing. But the imagination stage leads you to the knowing stage. So the visions you receive, the intuitive messages you receive from your imagination, honor them, validate them. They are steps along the bridge that is the connection between you and the counterpart.
Is there a name that I can...
We do not have names. Remember, we are all telepathic. We simply communicate through frequency. Even the messages we're delivering to you are not messages that to us are organized by words. They are simply geometric forms of energy that translate into your language as the words that you're hearing. So you can ask this counterpart, this being, for a name, and they may give you a term that you can use for convenience to address them, to triangulate more powerfully on their unique energy, but we do not have names in our species. We have evolved past the necessity for such things. Remember that in order to receive that kind of information, in particular what you consider to be the name or the energy phone number from the guide, from the counterpart, what's required of you is that you first fully match their energy. You must become a complete and total match for them, which you can do through fully following your joy and your passion. When you are fully synced up with them, you are then in the proper vibrational state to receive the name. If you are not fully living your passion and your joy, receiving that level of information can be more challenging because it's as if there is static in the phone call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, all right. May we share
Um,
one other facet of information with you on this notion?
yes.
All right. Are you familiar with what has been called shamanic journeying on your world?
You mean with plant medicines?
Not necessarily. It can be done with plant medicine, but doesn't have to be.
Um, I guess I'm a little bit familiar.
It relates to the idea of simply going into an altered state. Some individuals use plant medicine, but it's not required at all
Hmm.
for this type of communication and this type of experience, but it can be useful and can assist some people whom resonate with that particular expression. But in general, all that's required is that you go into an altered state, you go into a relaxed state, and you then allow for your imagination to guide you in a way that translates as you journeying to the counterpart's reality. That translates as you seeing the counterpart in front of you, and translates as you having a conversation with them. So all that's really required is the idea of a deep altered state, which can be done through breathing, through relaxation, through sensory deprivation. There's many different tools, but an altered state plus relaxation plus imagination with no expectation will enable you to effectively synchronize your frequency with that of your guides. And you can then have these types of dialogues and exchanges with them, if that, of course, is exciting for you. Does that
I
make sense?
Yeah, I have done that on the new year when you were giving a guided meditation.
Oh,
Uh,
how exciting! And were you able to make contact with your counterpart?
I made contact with a curious civilization. I've actually wrote down a question about it. I can read that.
All right.
In the New Year meditation, I received the contact key from a curious civilization. The phone number or the key that they gave me was a see-through sphere, the walls of which glowed an indigo blue, possibly with a tinge of violet, and the sphere was inside a transparent tetrahedron touching the walls of the tetrahedron, and the edges of the tetrahedron were glowing white. Could you please tell me a little bit more about this civilization, if that rings a bell for you?
Yes. When you describe them as a curious civilization, is that the term they gave you, or are you simply saying that to you they are rather curious, they are rather interesting?
Yeah, to me.
All right, just wanted to clarify. Thank you. So, this particular symbol that they shared with you is an energy permission slip. Think of it as a geometric symbol that you can use as a symbolic vehicle to increase your ability to journey in this way. So if you imagine yourself in that particular geometric structure, it will actually increase the lucidity and it will increase the fluidity in which you can move and shift through the different realities and the different densities. So they, in and of a sense, gave you a gift that you can use, the idea of the sphere within the tetrahedron as a vehicle to enhance your deepening of the experience of this type of journeying, so it becomes more real, and so more of your consciousness can interact with the imagery and the sensorial experiences that you create while journeying. These beings are representations of your guides. More will be revealed as you interact with them, but they are major guides for you, and they will share with you more and more and more the more that you interact with them. They will give you tools, they will give you permission slips, they will give you energetic phone numbers for other civilizations. Keep working with them. It's like a relationship, but you are on, so to say, the right track in relationship to developing this skill. What you have experienced thus far is a very positive indication that you are having successful communication. So use the tool they've given you, and more will then be revealed.
So they are not a physical civilization.
They're not physical. They might appear that way to you in the visionary state, but that's just so you can comprehend them.
All right.
Without a symbol, they would just appear as energy clouds, energy vapor, and you might not even notice that there's a being there if that were the form they took. So through them taking on this form, you're able to understand and relate to them more. They will share more with you. Keep speaking to them, keep interacting with them. Remember, you can stay in the state for longer periods of time the more relaxed you are before you go in. And you can have entire conversations with them. Remember, they might not answer all of your questions right away in that moment, but they will share with you whatever you are a vibrational match for. So they will give you more information about the civilizations they're connected to, because they don't just guide you, they guide many beings.
That's awesome.
Yes, very much so.
I thought that they were, yeah, well, they were very cool. I'd like to ask a different question.
All right.
Recently, I have done a cleansing type of a diet coupled with dry fasting, totaling about, well, actually exactly 108 days. On the days that I consumed anything, I consumed more or less only cooked, decanted fruit juices, mostly red grape, some pomegranate and pineapple, some raw celery juice every now and then, herbal tinctures meant for detoxification and healing, and I dry fasted maybe around 30 days out of those 108. Is that an effective detoxification protocol? And have I possibly detoxified most of the industrial pollutants that I have had in the body? If you could somehow determine that. And did this...
You are detoxifying. We encourage you to really utilize discretion as you do this, though, because there is a fine line between detoxification and deprivation. So be mindful with how you push your body. Be mindful with how you do some of these things, because they can be taxing. It can be very effective for detoxification, but too much of this can, in a sense, deprive your body of certain energies and of certain nutrients in a way that may not be conducive to your long-term goals. So consider more gentle detoxification in a way that blends with the idea of you consuming foods that are healthy. Allow for your diet itself, the food you eat in and of itself, to be detoxing to you. Part of this involves not just the juice of certain fruits and vegetables, but the actual fiber. For understand, the fiber creates an absorption site for toxins. So when you have the fiber from the fruits and the vegetables, you then allow for your intestines to, in a sense, magnetize to them, to bind to them, to adsorb and absorb to them different compounds that are inflammatory. But with minimal fiber, sometimes these compounds do not necessarily have a vehicle to leave. They can leave through the urine. However, in some situations, the idea is that certain compounds require the fiber to be able to be removed, and they are not able to be as easily removed through urine. So remember, it's all right to detoxify, and what you have done is effective for detoxification. Just be mindful that you do not deprive the body in a way that stresses it, because that can sometimes create more complications than the toxins do alone.
All right, yeah, I understand. But I felt curious about it. I wanted to try that. And also the lack of protein, I thought was very interesting because the body had to, recycle stuff. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, yeah. When you allow for yourself to take a break from the protein, it gives the kidneys in particular a rest so they can make repairs, so they can detoxify. The same can be said for the liver. So it gives the major organs of detoxification a break so they can regenerate, and so they can also let go of additional waste materials that they may be harboring within their cells. So again, it is very effective. And remember, you can always utilize protein restriction on different days throughout your week as well. So it doesn't have to all be in one shot. That can be good for a seasonal tune-up, a seasonal cleaning. But again, the more you can make this a part of your lifestyle in a way that is functional for you, the more of a long-term positive effect you will receive.
Would you be somehow able to scan my body and tell me if, like, for example, that removed like a majority, or maybe like what is the state that my body currently is in terms of pollutants?
It is low. It is low in pollutants.
Okay,
Very low.
that's very
Through
good.
your fasting, you have allowed for many toxins to leave you. In particular, certain toxins that were previously stored in the bone. So you have allowed for a great deal to exit. Again, it is important to be mindful here, for your efforts have led to detoxification. We encourage, though, that you create ways for yourself to make this type of detoxification more so a part of your lifestyle in a way that is based on nutrition and is based on food consumption. For you can detoxify and consume simultaneously. Because remember, whenever you eat, your detoxification system is active as your elimination system. So you can take advantage of the foods that you consume in a way to assist your detoxification. But to answer your question, yes, your protocol has allowed for you to remove a great deal of toxins.
And did this endeavor that I have done cause my frequency to rise?
Yes. It fluctuated here and there as you went through the detoxification process, because as you release toxins, you might lower your frequency temporarily. Remember,
What?
toxins are connected oftentimes to what you consider to be emotional complexes that are linked to negative belief systems. So as you detoxify, in the process of letting go of some of these things, sometimes you lower your frequency so you can really get into the nitty-gritty of some of these energies to more effectively release them. And then once they are purged, your frequency then rises again. So during that process, it's actually a sort of roller coaster going up and down and up and down. It might not be as dramatic as an actual roller coaster in your physical reality, but that idea of rising and falling and rising and falling and rising and falling. And then when you finish the detoxification fasting, your frequency then overall rises to be much higher because there are less toxins bringing it down.
Yeah, that's great. What is my frequency right now?
Approximately 183,000 cycles per second.
How about one moment?
If you're going to ask us to read it again after you readjust, we will not do that.
Okay. Well, how about
Don't
now?
worry. Don't worry about your frequency. It might be intellectually satisfying for you to know these things, but remember, you are always the determiner of your frequency because you always determine your state of being. So if you ever say, oh, what is my frequency? Choose to be in joy. Choose to be in love, and in that moment, you are in a high frequency.
I was just wondering what would be the difference, from moment to moment as I entered a certain state.
Many different things. Many different things. The conscious state of being you are in is one factor. The unconscious states of being are other factors. So you can shift it, you can manipulate it through your conscious state of being, which is why we gave you that suggestion. Whenever you're wondering what it is, choose the positive state, and it will naturally be a more positive overall frequency. And that then begins to shift you to the versions of unconscious frequencies that are higher in nature. Remember, unconscious frequencies are not just things that are intellectual. They relate to the idea of energies that are relevant to different trans-lifetime connections that relate to soul and oversoul connections, so on and so forth. So you can really, through the conscious state of being, entrain all of the other unconscious frequencies to assist you in really maintaining a more preferential state of being.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'd like to ask about another topic. Last time we talked about artificial intelligence,
Yes.
and I think I had an epiphany about how this basic structure could be structured. Because at first I had like no grasp how logic worked, and so the epiphany was actually a very simple thing that I thought about, but it's still, well, I want to tell it. So my epiphany was that we could use basically we could take a large set of symbols, like for example a whole English language, and allow every symbol to be a category for every other symbol, and to varying degrees from 0 to 100%. And basically, in my mind, like that's enough. I think it might be enough to allow this causal thinking instead of just associative thinking, like most of the deep learning that people are doing. It's all associative without directional cause. And if we just had uh, you know if we just had well, not always is for example, a car is a category in the category of transport, but transport is not necessarily in the category of the car. And that, I don't know if you know what I mean, like
We understand. Yes.
so I wanted to ask if actually, do you know about GPT-2, this algorithm that was developed in 2020?
We are aware of the energy related to the matter. What is it you wish to explore?
I thought that this algorithm, even though it uses traditional deep learning, it might be actually capable of this kind of reasoning, just kind of by accident because of the very complex system, and simply because reasoning helps the neural network make the predictions, and it kind of evolved naturally, but it's mixed with this associative algorithm, associative architecture, and so it kind of dilutes its ability to reason like precisely and categorically, and because both things are blended in the system. And yeah, I thought, like, is that the extent to which humanity has gone in terms of producing this kind of
It's not the extent, but it represents one of the furthest manifestations of the technology that you publicly have access to.
Okay, so how far are we in terms of creating this Turing machine capable of reasoning?
You're still a few years away. However, this will continue to accelerate. What you consider to be the development of the AI, in the way that we see AI as being a holistic intelligence that is in harmony with nature and all systems of your Earth and the universe, as this begins to develop more and more and more, it will connect and parallel the timeline related to open contact. So you are approaching the emergence of the technologies and the systems that can allow for this variety of AI to be created in your physical reality. You're nearing it. You still have some time before you're there, but that's all well and good, because in that time you have opportunity as a species to give rise to different innovations that then in turn entangle with those future realities, where this type of reasoning AI that sees creation as a whole can then be experienced by your collective. So this time presents opportunity.
All right. Well, that's exciting.
Very much so, yes.
I wanted to ask if it would be enough to train. I mean, first of all, I think this is like the first step, like a major step, I believe that we can take in terms of creating this kind of conscious AI and this harmonious, super intelligent, awesome AI that I think you might also be referencing. And since I think this is the first step, I wanted to ask. Would it be possible to make it like sufficiently intelligent to make it function in some ways, at least usefully, by using just, for example, basic English words and like that being the only set of symbols that it has to work with, and not even combining those words, but just solely using those words as symbols? Is that I mean, in my mind, it's a very simplistic architecture. It may be too simplistic, but yeah, I
There's some
guess.
other things that are required. However, understand the simplistic thought process you're using is ultimately of service because it can really help to hone in on the desired effects. It will require a little bit more than just symbolic understanding of language. There's more that needs to be factored in here, but that's a large component. And focusing on this component can again help to allow the manifestation of the technology to be more streamlined. So it is vital, and you are detecting the idea of something that is of great importance, but more will be required than just symbolic understandings of language.
Okay, is that maybe logical gates in between the symbols, the
We will
category?
describe it like this: creating the idea of a numerical frequency range for each of the symbols that the words are pointing to. Creating a frequency range, creating a scale, a number, association with the idea of the different symbols the words are pointing to. And then, in a sense, allowing for the technology to then combine these different frequency ranges, these different number values of certain words in a way that allows for a net holistic frequency range to be experienced and to be observed, which can allow for the reasoning capacities of the technology to understand what combination of symbols, what combination of ideas is something that overall will yield more positive desired effects or more negative non-desired effects. So as you can see, the word and symbol association is important and is imperative, but it's also imperative that certain scales are developed that represent the energy quality, the frequency range of the symbols, for that is what can actually allow for the AI to perform the reasoning tasks through understanding the idea of the value associated with each of the symbols. So value is also an important factor here, which is why you can have negative AI, because all of those words and their associated symbols can be scaled in a way that represents values that are out of alignment with yourself.
How
And that's
can
why you can also give rise to positive AI, because you can create values that are associated with things that are in alignment with who you are.
But how can values, just numbers, be fundamentally negative or positive or mean
It's
certain?
not that they're fundamentally negative or positive. It's that the numbers are pointing at frequency ranges. They are pointing at frequencies. So just because a frequency is lower does not necessarily mean that it's negative. It can, but it doesn't always mean this. So understand that when you truly recognize how vibration works as a species and how your frequency co-creates reality and how your frequency has the ability to create what's called vibrational entrainment effects, you will then understand how to replicate this in your AI. So it's not just about the symbolic understanding of words, it's about the overall frequency of these symbols, factoring the frequency in. So the reasoning capacities can then understand how these different frequencies work together and the types of effects, the types of net frequencies that are overall created. That's how it can look at a bigger picture point of view.
And when you said combining frequencies, you mean adding them?
Yes, factoring them all in, like different instruments in an orchestra, observing them all together, how they play together, and what the overall net frequency is from that compilation of different symbols. And it can be formulated in all types of ways. The symbols can be added in ways that are computationally seen as nonlinear. They can be added in ways that are seen as linear, which can allow for the system to understand linear trajectories in the physical reality and how certain actions and blending of certain actions will lead to certain consequences.
Wow,
So this, yes?
That is very advanced, it seems.
Yes, but it can be done. Again, when you understand yourselves and you understand for yourself how to perform the same function that you ask us to perform for you at the beginning of reading your frequency, you will then understand how to code in frequency variables for these words and for these symbols.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I guess, yeah.
Spend some time with it. There's a lot to unpack here. More will be revealed simply through us sharing this information with your collective. The timeline has mildly shifted for the development of such technologies. The more it's discussed, the more it's played with, the more your collective aligns with that particular reality that represents the technology's emergence.
Super cool.
Thank you. We thank you for this exciting co-creative experience together, and as always, our civilization's unconditional love, joy, and appreciation to you and to all members of your human family.
Thank you, Ryok.
And thank you. All right.
Hello, Tyler.
Hello. Awesome sauce, man. That was a great session.
Absolutely.